Hello, and welcome to the Radiant Mission Podcast. My name is Rebecca Toomey, and we are on a mission to encourage and inspire you as you're navigating through your life and with your relationship with Christ. We have been in a series on being countercultural in a secular world, and today I welcome a very special guest who has so graciously agreed to share her testimony with us today. Her name is Candice, and her story is extremely heavy and heartbreaking. As a victim of sexual abuse, she was later diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, which is also known as DID, and she has endured so much hurt, suffering, and pain. But God is so much bigger, and her story is a true testament of that. So, Candice, thank you so much for being here today and for being willing and open to be vulnerable with us.
Hi, thank you so much. And it's an absolute pleasure being here.
Amazing. So we're just going to jump into it. And I'd love for you to share with our audience a bit about your story, how your journey began, and how it's led you to where you are today.
Okay, well, I'll start sort of somewhere in the middle um,
Okay.
because there's just so much. But the, the the gist of it is that about going on 3 years now, I've been on an incredible journey with the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
I had gotten to a point in my life where I just kept running into brick walls. I couldn't understand why. Every time I thought I was making progress in my relationship with him, but also in life in general, why I kept hitting this spot where everything just fell apart. The minute I gained some traction, it just disappeared. And if people had to describe me then, they would have said to you that I was quite a contradiction in terms like one day I would be uh, happy-go-lucky, and then I would have extreme downs, and then we'd have debates or arguments, or I'd say things that I had absolutely no recollection of.
Mm,
And it got to the point with me that I could barely stand 10, 15 minutes without listening to my music,
mm,
because music is something that calmed me down quite drastically because there was just so much noise in my head.
mm.
Um, a lot of people don't relate to that, but
What kind of
we all
music?
have this.
What kind of music did you like to listen to?
I love all kinds of music, but at that particular point, I was only listening to gospel
Okay.
worship music.
Okay.
Um, it was the music that kept me at peace, and I
Okay.
could just have my voice, my internal monologue,
Hmm.
and I could hear God.
Okay.
Um, so the minute that music stopped, then there was just all sorts of voices, and I had no idea at the time that I had DID.
Hmm.
I knew that there was something very different about me because people had made various comments through my life. And also the memory loss. The memory loss is a big thing. Feeling like you're out of your body, like you're experiencing something from another angle. Um, anyway, so I got to the point and I begged God. I said, please, like I know you know me, and I know that you exist, but I need you to just intervene. I need to know what I'm here for, because I've been through so much hurt, and you know it just keeps spiraling. Once you start your life off as a child um, being violated and molested, nothing gets better for a very, very long time.
Hmm.
Um, and even then, it's just like putting a band-aid on it. You're just living your life as best you know how, but you're broken.
Hmm.
Um, so immediately the Lord answered me and he said, well, are you going to listen? And I was like, okay, let's listen. What came about after that was a lot of information I had never expected to get. I knew I had been through so much pain. I, I knew things had happened to me when I was a child. I knew that the relationship with my mom was toxic. and I could never understand why she couldn't connect with me or anything. The minute we had a moment where we might be considered mother and daughter, then there was this massive wall and a lot of anger.
Mm.
So, and what I found out going through this whole process of healing with the Lord is that the person who had molested me was in fact my grandfather. My mom was dead. This was quite a shock to me when I recovered that memory.
Wow. So that was something that you had suppressed. It it
Yes,
had occurred. You knew something happened, but you didn't remember all the details of it.
the image what the memory that I held was that it was a silhouette. Like, or I could remember the room I was in. I could remember the feeling of being so small and scared,
Hmm.
and I could remember the smells of the room.
Hmm.
Um, and I knew what happened to me, but I could not see this person.
Hmm.
There was just this black shadow. Um, and through, I think it was probably about my fourth or fifth. We call it a prayer meeting, but it's basically like a deliverance or prayer, healing prayer and everything.
Hmm.
Um, I was very, 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 very lucky. I'm not lucky, blessed to be going to a church with a woman who is profound and very well anointed with that
Mm.
healing ministry.
Hmm.
And she walked with me for the 2 years,
Oh, wow.
where I would see her every month
Hmm.
or sometimes twice a month.
Hmm.
But yeah, so we started recovering those memories, and I had to start dealing with that.
Yeah.
Because you can't say you've forgiven people or you've moved past it or you've healed if you don't actually remember what what happened. You're forgiving the wrong people for the wrong things. Um, so through that, um, I realized, well, I had a dream. I had a dream one night, and it was definitely an intense dream, where I had different versions of myself. I had a dream that um, I had a mom me and a dad me, and they were busy dying, um, and or disappearing, and they left me a note telling me to go find a Nicole Holt. My surname is Holt, and I went on this mission to find this person who was also me, and I found myself in a factory of me's. Um, with there was It was a very dark, scary factory,
Mm.
and there were gatekeepers there, and they didn't want to let me in. And
Mm.
then a 12-year-old version of myself came running out and said, "No, no, no, she's with us. It's fine." And they let me in, and I was in an entire waiting room of myself, various different ages, small, big, pregnant. I have two kids, so um, there was that. And then there were babies, baby me's, and I could not understand what was happening. And but as we were going through each room, there was babies left alone to do very dangerous things. And then there was a group of me's learning to bind and loose and pray. And so there was hope in that. But then these me's knew me, and
Mm.
I had no idea who they were.
Mm.
Uh, um, so after having that dream, I woke up and I was very, very confused. But after doing a little bit of research and going to speak to a psychologist and psychiatrist, and also more healing prayer and all of that, they said that it is complex trauma, but in my case, DID, where I have or had 27 audible parts. So there were 27 me's that were constantly speaking in my head all the time, which is why I could not function. I could not stop without listening to music. I could not actually think about anything. And I, I cannot tell you how the walk with the Lord has actually calmed my entire life down to the point where um, I don't get upset with people. I don't get frustrated really anymore. Um, everything is everything's okay. Um, the changeover in me is so profound that even the people that, like my family, that would have said to you, no, this is just how she is. She's just not well. They've even come and they've said, wow, there's a big difference in you. And that really was that healing. Um, once I had been diagnosed, um, and we actually acknowledged that there were these parts, um, you go through a process where you integrate, um, and ask each part, do they know Jesus? And are they willing to forgive the hurt? Because each part holds a memory. Um, and then you let them go as they're not dead, they're still part of you, but they've now integrated into the part they're supposed to be, if that makes any sense. Um, so the way it happened with me is that, um, I had a bunch of little versions of me, young, with some 3, 4, 12, 11, 7. Um, and that was where a lot of the suffering was, and a lot of the hurt and rejection. I couldn't understand why my mom didn't want me, those sort of things. And we created, like, in my mind, a home for all these parts. And and it's really quite interesting because you can actually, or I could see this home in my mind, and it was like being there. I could communicate with my system, all my parts, and actually get to know each and every one of them, um, and what their function was, what memory were they holding. And after going through all of that and getting to know those parts, but also myself, um, there was a lot of healing and release through that. And yeah, in one of the prayer meetings that we had, we asked, well, Yonita, that is her name, she asked, do I feel that my parts are ready to go with Jesus? They're not going to disappear, they're going to be with me. And we asked the Lord to please put each and every one of them one back where they should be, because they all form the the whole me, if that makes sense. Um, yeah. Oh, sorry. I feel like I'm speaking in spirals here. I hope I'm making sense. But it's quite something to know that you have been hurt in such a way as a child that has made you break and split apart to function. Um, you and that in itself is, I think, it's such a hectic enemy tactic. I'm from South Africa, Cape Town. We have so many women, so many young children, boys and girls alike, who go through the same thing repeatedly. So I really feel that if people could just get to know more about this, and know that there is actually hope and healing at the end of the day. Um, Never in my life would I have guessed or even believed that I could feel the way I do now. Um, Something that the Lord showed me while I was busy trying to forgive, struggling immensely to forgive my mom specifically. Shame, I feel bad saying that now, but I mean, I held such a lot of pain from the rejection of her not wanting me. That So I was really battling with that. So the Lord showed me like a circle, like we're a circle. The circle is our life, and in between, in the middle of that is a little dot, and that is God. Um, but everybody's a circle. So what he showed me is that when we're living our life, we bump into each other, and that causes either an outward bump or an inward bump that separates us from Him, or it separates us from other people. But the more we hold on to those bumps, the more spiky we get, or the further away we get from God. So what we need to do is take that bump and give it to Him. And then all of those bumps will make Him grow bigger in us. And eventually we'll be so full of Him that when we bump people, we won't hurt them. We will just give a little bit of Him.
Mm-hmm.
So that made me feel like I could do that. I could
Yeah.
actually do that. I could
Mm-hmm.
take that hurt and not have it separate me or hurt anybody else with it, but I could use it to get to know God more, um, and to grow that relationship. Um, and then He started revealing to me the purpose of everybody in my life, which was another beautiful thing that He did. Um, you know, you think sometimes, I was so little, where were you? Where were you, God? Like, why didn't you stop that? Why didn't you let anybody come and hug me when I was like that? Or, why was I so badly unwanted? And the Lord showed me each and every reason why people were in my life. I have a dad who's not my biological father. He married my mom when I was 4. Um, and he was definitely amazing when I was younger, but as I've grown over the years and things have happened that have caused issues in the family and resentment in many ways, that bond is gone. Um, and the Lord showed me that if it wasn't for my dad, I would have struggled very much to understand the father side of God. Um, you know, the the one who says rules and justice and look and all of that, but also very loving and nurturing. So I needed to love my dad, um, regardless of what our relationship was like. And the other the other thing that happened while I was on this journey was that um, when I started going for pre-ministry, um, I was working for my family. I was working in a family business and I was living with them at the time. And through doing some renunciations of um, all the bloodline things in both sides, I ended up getting into a massive fight with my mom and they threw me out and fired me immediately, same day. So, so
Wow.
yeah. So um, I I was like, wow, okay, now I need to hustle. I need to survive. I have my son. He's he's 10. Then he was 8. Um, and yeah, so very graciously, his dad helped me like survive. Um, and I got a job about 2 months later at a place called U-Turn, which helps homeless people. get off the street, rehabilitates them and everything. I was not qualified for this job, but the Lord said,
Mm,
apply.
mm.
So I applied and I got the job. This job was me recruiting, well, not recruiting, assisting the people on the program to get jobs once they had reached a specific level.
Okay.
But when I started there, my first day, I realized that I was in the area where a lot of my teenage trauma had happened. So I'm going to go through this with you now. So um, the main office was in between a place where I was abused by my dad's mom, with a lot of it was an emotional abuse. Um, and then another was the road to the right of that was where I was gang raped at 13. So I asked God, why? What is happening? Like, why are you doing this?
Wow.
Where am I? And he said, just trust me. So I was like, okay, I will trust you. And I was like, well, I'm just going to focus on this job. I'm just going to be very, very grateful for this job. And he was like, this is not forever. And I was like, okay, well, let's just do this. So as it happens, part of that job was me traveling to the different, what do you call them, like different sections of the company. They had one in every little area. Some of them were stores and some of them were workshops. But I had to go to all of them. And each and every point that I had to go to was a place that something had happened. Um,
No way. So every
yeah,
place that you were sent to for this job, it was a piece of your story where in the past you had traumatic experiences that had
yes,
happened to you in those places. Wow, that
yes,
is wild.
yeah.
And that
It
must have
was,
been terrifying. And I mean, first of all, I'm so sorry for what happened to you. I'm so sorry.
thank you.
Was that
Such a
a
weird
very
thing to say.
dangerous, like, was that a common thing to happen
Um,
to people to go in those areas and for gangs like that to do things, do that to women?
I would say yes and no. So I went through a phase when I was 12 to 13 where I was immensely rebellious.
Mhm.
At some point, I just had enough, and I just wanted to go. I figured, well, nobody wants me here anyway, so I will just leave. And I started running away,
Okay.
um, and getting involved with the wrong crowd.
Mhm.
There is definitely a lot of gangsterism in that area, but it is also very um, hidden from the most middle to upper class families.
Mhm.
And so if they weren't specifically looking for it, they would not have noticed it. Um, this group of guys were gangsters and they were drinking and doing all sorts of things. And yeah, so I didn't know at the time, but there's a hierarchy in gangs, and they you know, even though uh, somebody will come to their house, if that person is a higher level or something like that, they have to go along with whatever he says because
Mhm.
otherwise um, they're in trouble.
Mhm.
And the person that came to visit the one night while we were drinking just happened to have terrible intentions, and he got the five of my friends, yeah, to rape me. So
Wow.
that was it was quite something.
I'm
Um,
so sorry.
shame.
That
It's
that's a
okay.
very so I'd like to kind of walk us back a little bit through your story because
Mm,
something that you said it's important for you to you want to point out to other people or make other people aware of DID, of dissociative
yes,
identity disorder, which I think can also be called multiple personality disorder. But
yes.
something that I'd like to point out about it, you mentioned the personalities part, so it usually typically means that someone has maybe two or more identities or maybe alter
Mhm.
egos. They might call it alters. But this is something that's a psychological response to trauma. and specifically in early childhood. And that's something that I learned through researching this. But of course, you're going to know way more than I am about this. But I'm following along with this story that you're sharing with us, that when you were very small, you had a sexual trauma that you repressed for a long time, but you continued to experience trauma in this dysfunctional, I don't know if that's the right word, but dysfunctional relationship with your mom.
Definitely, I would use that.
Okay. And her it sounds like she also had a lot of dysfunctions in her
Mm,
past, led to now she has a child. She's not treating you well. She's not treating you good. There's dysfunctions. Other things are coming in, and you're feeling unloved and unwanted. And as you're continuing to grow, now you're starting, like you said, 12-ish, you're getting rebellious. Nobody wants me here. I'm just going to leave into the arms of other evil who
yes,
also abuse you and traumatize you. And now it sounds like there also was a layer with the emotional abuse with your dad's mom, which I don't know at what
mm,
point that happened. But all of this is explaining what happened with this DID and you breaking apart as a person because you just, I mean, all that you're seeing and all that you're facing as a child as you're growing is heartbreak and disappointment. So I just
yes,
want to, that's what I'm hearing. I'm breaking this down as you're going through this. And I hope that our listeners are understanding that I think is DID, they say that it's sometimes really it's a coping strategy to survival or
yes.
the trauma that you're
Um,
experiencing.
so we everybody just dissociates in some level.
Okay.
Like we- it's a natural response. Your your body and your brain needs some time to just rest or focus.
Hmm.
But um, in situations like mine and various others, um, you're too young to actually have the emotional capacity
Hmm.
to deal with what you're currently facing. The hurt is immense.
That makes
So
sense because our
you,
brains don't stop developing until what, we're 25 to 30, 25 to 27, something like that.
yes, and I called my grandfather Opa. It's the Afrikaans word for grandfather. Um, I, I grew up in their house because my mom had me out of wedlock, and she was always out, like trying to work and also still be young. She was 18 when she had me.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time with my Oma, which is my gran and her mom. And that that was um my safe place was with my Oma. Um, she was my everything. She gave me love and she spent so much time with me. I had the best memories of her. And then the man that used to play dominoes with me and all that stuff is also the man who hurt me so horribly. I cannot tell you how often it happened. I don't know.
Mhm.
I have left those memories where they are because the things that I worked through. I believe that don't scratch where you don't need to.
Mhm.
Um, so the things I've acknowledged who it was. I've acknowledged that it hurt, and I can just I'm just very grateful that I was able to actually separate myself. That even though it's quite a difficult thing to live with, that somehow the Lord had blessed me with a brain that was able to separate that. Because even thinking about it now, um, I wish I was there to save myself. Like, it
Yeah, of
makes sense.
course. Of course.
Um, because it's just the person you trust, the people that are supposed to nurture you and love you and keep you safe are the very people that are abusing you and confusing you because you're no like I specifically remember being told that everybody knew about it, and if I complained, they'd give me away. So I'd always had this fear that I was just going to be given away or like left somewhere. So that was an intense fear that I grew up with. Um, and then, later on, uh, finding out that the same thing had happened to my mom, which led me to understand that um, it's like she would never tell me who my real father was, who my biological father was. Her answer was that she doesn't remember his name, or it's not important. And then finding out that it it was very much a likelihood that that is my grandfather is my father, and I could very
Wow.
well be my mom's sister. So I really like it's very intense having that come out of my mouth, because
Yeah.
that means that I'm a result of something terrible. Um, and
But
I
it's
could
not you.
understand.
You are not terrible. It's, I get
It's
what you're saying.
mm,
There's that's so hard, I'm sure, to just even wrap your head around. I know it is
mm,
for me that first of all he could do something like that to his daughter. But then again
to
to
his
his
granddaughter,
granddaughter
mm,
who
who
also is
is his
his daughter
yeah.
in a sense,
Um,
That's just a
uh,
cycle. Now,
yeah,
you said your grandmother was alive for a period of time when you were little.
yes.
Did she
Um,
know about what was going on?
um, I suspect that she did. Um, she's not alive for me to ask her anymore. She died in 2014 before all of this came out. But uh, I suspect that there must have been some form of knowing. I mean, you can't not know. Um, my grandfather had some iffy friends that used to sit and they would work on cars and drink beer outside and whatever. And then they would come and ask me, oh, come do some cartwheels. Show us how you do cartwheels. And I was wearing a dress. And my gran would call me inside, very upset. She would be like, come inside. And she's like, don't do that when they ask you to do that. And I remember not understanding why.
Mhm,
Um, or like there was an occasion where one of them would come into the house and I was sitting watching TV like a little tomboy or whatever, maybe like my legs weren't folded, just enjoying my time watching TV. And I didn't notice, but my grandmother walked in and she got very upset and shouted at me like, "Close your legs!" And like I was
mhm,
doing something to entice this person. Um, so I think she must have been aware that there were things with kids that were not kosher.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and why would my grandfather be hanging out with them if he wasn't that way inclined?
Sure. Yeah, that's very
Um,
interesting. Did you feel like he ever gave you an indication that this was something that he did outside of the family, or it almost kind of sounds like keeping it in the family was how he kept the secret?
yeah, I'm not 100% sure if what his other hobbies were. As far as I remember, he went to work diligently during the week and he was
Mhm,
at home on the weekends. Every Sunday, me and him would go out. Um, he would, on the Friday, he would buy me a dress. And on the Sunday, we would go, I was wearing my little dress, and we would go and get fish and chips, and then go and walk around the dam. And I have a complete blank of what else we could have done. We spent the whole Sunday together, every Sunday. And
mhm.
all I remember till now is going for fish and chips and then going to the dam. Um, I know that that was probably the time that those sort of things were happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only time that we would have been really alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really what was going on there.
Yeah. So you
And
were
then the
really,
grooming,
I was going to say you were really his focus. He was focused
yes,
on you
yes.
during that time.
This this caused an immense amount of frustration and jealousy from my mom's side, believe it or not. Yeah,
From your
so I
mom.
think yeah, there was I think maybe there was a little bit of like a Stockholm syndrome type thing.
Yeah, I
Um,
bet. Because it
yeah,
sounds like he
so
was probably doing the same thing to her.
yes,
And
and
now
all the way
you
up
come
until
along
she
and
was
you're,
old. Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So, for all those years it had been her, and then I was born, and she was nothing.
Mm,
Um, in fact, my grandfather wanted very little to do with her. And then I was everything. I got the dresses, I got the attention. Um, you know, I used to resent my mom so much for the way she treated me for that. Um, I couldn't understand why you wouldn't be happy that your child was loved by somebody. But looking at this situation, it's really, really not a normal situation. It's so complex, and if I think about um, just who my mom is and the fact that she has not dealt with any of that. I mean, she cannot actually acknowledge it within herself either. I understand why it was so difficult for her being a mom. Um, be- I have a brother who she is completely opposite with.
mm,
She's able to nurture and love him, and care for him, and she's able to give him hugs. I think the first time I got a hug from anybody that wasn't my grandmother was when I was 21. So I
wow.
was not affectionate at all. Physical contact still for me is very difficult. Um, Even I have a daughter now, she's just turned 18, and it's been quite difficult for me to push past um, becoming my mom to her.
Mm,
Having to actually force myself to relate because I don't know how that's done. I don't, want to love her, and I do love her, but there's just always that like, I don't know how to hug sort of
mm-hmm,
thing.
mm-hmm,
So yeah, I think I understand from my mom's side that pain must be immense. I mean, there was also a lot of rejection in the womb. When she was pregnant with me, I'm quite sure she had her own emotions and didn't know what to do with this child.
mm-hmm,
And I think it was quite honorable of her, at least, to keep me. Um, could have gone another way.
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
yeah, and she was also treated very badly in the hospital. When I was born, I had a cord around my neck and I was blue. I was not breathing. And they took me and they just walked out with me. So she didn't actually know whether I was alive or dead.
Oh man.
But um, I know, well, I know this. I have felt it many a time. Is that going through that memory is almost I can feel the level of relief with her feeling that "Oh, this is not my problem anymore." And then my Oma, my gran, coming in with me in a blanket, nurturing me, and then she was like, "There's that fear and frustration and rejection again." It's like, "Oh, okay,
Mm-hmm,
I have to still do this."
mm-hmm,
So there was that constant yo-yoing in our relationship that
mm,
really was quite painful.
okay.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. Wow. That is a lot. That is very heartbreaking, first of all, to hear. And I guess I have some questions about your mom did end up getting married or to your stepdad
Yes. Yeah.
and had a child with your stepdad, your brother.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I imagine that must have been very hard for you, as you mentioned that she was different with him and more affectionate and things like that. And I'm sure once you started to understand the dynamic of what happened with her and why things were the way they were, it helped to explain a lot. But I think that's the thing that's so hard about being a child going through all of this is you don't know.
Yes.
You can't
You
comprehend
don't
it, you
know.
can't understand it, you have no clue. You're just an
And
innocent child in all of this that's experiencing the hurt of that person who's hurting you, which I do believe that you can experience feeling an emotion in the womb and at birth. I'm very passionate about birth, so you'll hear I talk a lot about that on this podcast. But um, that's something that I feared too. I was when I was pregnant with my son, our family dog died. She passed away, and I cried every day for a month. And that whole month, I was so worried that I was gonna damage him by being
mhm,
so
hurt.
distressed,
Mm,
having so much distress. But I hear that with women's stories all the time of going through some sort of trauma or divorce or death and going through that trauma, and the baby feels that. It experiences it too.
beautiful.
It goes through it too. So that's interesting that I'm glad that's something that it sounds like you've explored and explored healing from too. I'm
Mm,
just so proud of you in hearing how how much you've gone down all of these healing paths and healing all of these different moments in time and pockets in time, and that God has revealed things to you and shown you like, hey, this is not who you are, who I made you to
yes.
be. And you are my child. Child of God, you're my
Mm,
child. And these hurt people have hurt you. But at the end of the day, there has been healing from him. And that's what I'm hearing in your story. So I know I had you kind of go backwards a little bit, but you were sharing about working for this homeless association that was sending you to
mm.
all these places of trauma. So I'll let you kind of go back into that part. I'm sorry for diverting you
No, no,
backwards.
no, that's fine. Um, so yeah, at least I've given you a little bit more of a picture of
Yeah.
why I was
Yeah.
the way I was and how I ended up in so many different situations. Sometimes I I have to take a breath because I'm like, "Whew, this is actually my life. I did go through it.
You're strong. I just
So
have to tell you, you are a strong, resilient woman. You are strong.
thank you. It's weird to think that I might be strong because at the time you don't think about those things.
Of
You just
course. You're
you're just
surviving.
surviving. Yeah. And then looking back at it, it never really feels like, oh yeah, I survived. It's normally like, ow. It's like it
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah.
But now, going through all of these things and healing from them, I can see um, the benefit of potentially inspiring other people to push. Um, Through my teenage years, I tried to kill myself 13 times, unsuccessfully, obviously, but there were 13 suicide attempts. And I can honestly say, if anybody understands how it feels to want to just disappear, it is me. Um, but yeah, I really hope to just give people some hope. Um,
God is using you right
and
now. He is using you right now in this moment as you're sharing your story. There's a reason why he didn't let you go all those times
Mm,
because now here you are, sharing that. I'd love to ask you a little bit about your relationship with your kids. And do you feel that have you been able to talk to them about any of this stuff? Or has it been something that
yes.
you kind of kept for a while and told them later? Or,
So I have the best two children. They are just so amazing. Um, Completely different. My daughter's very soft. My son is very outspoken, and he's not scared of anything. Um, and him and I are extremely close. My daughter stays with her dad, because when she was about 3 or 4, I had relapsed into the drug world and things because I was not coping with life in general. And I asked him to please take her because I didn't want her to see what was happening, and I had no sense of control. I really didn't, which was a difficult thing for me. But he did such a good job with her, and she comes to me every weekend, and she's a great sister to her brother. And the dynamic ended up working very well through the years. She was happy, and I didn't want to take her back if things were good there, you know.
Did you say she's
Um,
18?
she's 18 now, yeah.
Okay.
She turned
Okay.
18 in October.
Wow, happy birthday to
Um,
her.
Thanks. Um, so yeah, my kids know, they know that things happened to me. They don't have a lot of detail. I didn't go into much detail, but they also know how people have treated me. They've seen firsthand, the the gaslighting and the being the scapegoat for everybody's things and always being the one who's crazy. Um, your kids pick that up,
Mhm,
and I think the lack of love that I had to go through sort of doubled the in what I poured out in them. I was like, it was a thing for me that both of them knew and continue to know that despite what my life might look like or what's happening, they are wanted and loved.
mm,
That that it didn't matter. Nothing was ever going to change that. That they were not mistakes and they are not a burden. They are just perfect, and it's a gift to me that they are alive. So that's sort of how I've raised them,
mhm,
knowing that. Um, so yeah, they're both well aware of the fact that their mom has been hurt a lot.
mhm,
But yeah,
mhm. That
I
is
think
beautiful that you've been able to have that opportunity to kind of do it over again in a sense, right? Like
mm,
you went through this trauma with your mom and the dysfunction and her just not knowing how to love you the way that you
mm,
deserved to be loved by your mother. So to have that awareness of, I want to make sure my children know that I love them and that they're not a
mm,
mistake is a beautiful thing.
thank you. Yeah. Um, they really are such a blessing to me, and I think they are a big reason why I keep pushing.
I
Um,
was going to ask, do you feel like becoming a mom has been healing and helped to heal you
yes.
on your journey?
Mm. I was telling somebody the other day that with both of them, when they were born, there was almost like it was with Mishka specifically, it was like a veil um, lifted. Like I saw things in a completely different light. I was like, no, no, no. It's time to be very, very smart now with your decision making, and this person that's just appeared here is your responsibility, and you need to start making better decisions. And so I feel like there was just there was this veil lifted, or whatever I was living in my mind changed when she was born. Um, and then with my son, the same thing actually. It was the minute I looked at him, I was just filled with this. I don't know what it is. I think it's that love that you have for your child, and knowing that you need to look after them and care for them, and that I didn't think it was possible to love anything more than I love my daughter. Not that I love her more, but there was just this overwhelming sense of, oh, I didn't know it was possible to love anything this much.
Yeah. Oh,
And
I
yeah.
know that feeling for sure.
Yeah.
You have that
Um,
baby, it's like
so
it's instinct.
yes. Um, and then I think it's just for the second one, it just doubled up. So
Yep.
it was good.
That's the funny thing about having more is you hear like people wonder, can I ever love as much as I did the
Mm,
first time? And it's like, yep, you can.
yep, you
Even
can
more.
even more. Um, yeah, it's been quite a journey. I'm very, very grateful that I was able to do that for
Hmm.
them.
Hmm.
I do believe that at least that part was what I received from my gran. She was a very big influence in my life. I remember conversations with her clear as day, where she would say to me, you don't need to be the smartest person, you don't need to have a lot of money, you don't need to do this, but what you do need is manners. You do need to treat people nicely. And, if you're kind and you have good manners, you will do well in life. That was always her thing. Treating people fairly. At that time when I was small, it was still very much apartheid here, where people were separated. So um, she made a very big effort to teach me to love all people, and just be good
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
kind. Um, why she did that, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'm very,
Well,
very grateful that she did.
I wanted to ask you about the faith side of this. Were
Mm.
your Did your grandparents go to church at all? Did your grandma go to church? It sounds like you didn't grow up in the church. How and when did that progress? Was that not until you were an adult, until a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Or tell me about your faith journey.
So, yeah, I knew nothing about Jesus or church up until I was much older. I mean, other than what we learned in school, and even for some reason that was also very little. But I think I'd stepped foot in a church once. Both sides of my family were very much into the occult. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, yes.
And
Um,
what is, can you tell me anything more about that?
I don't have much detail. I know that my grand comes from Kimberley, which is a mining district or whatever. So they've got this big mining thing which they've dug like deep, deep, deep down into the ground. And she grew up in those mines, and those mines are well known for people who do witchcraft
Hmm.
and all sorts of crazy things. There was
Okay.
a lot that came up through my deliverance, but I don't have details,
Okay. So it
because
wasn't like you weren't being taught this stuff. You just kind of knew that there was some weird stuff.
that there was some weird things that they were maybe into, or my grand used to say, like if we were naughty and we ran away from her, like to avoid getting a hiding or getting into trouble, she would say that her third eye would come out and like we would get hurt. And that would happen. I mean, if we ran away from her when she caught us doing something naughty, and we would get hurt. We'd fall, trip over something, and like, yeah,
Interesting.
yes. So that sort of stuff. But I was never like she never taught me anything funny like that. But they didn't teach me anything about God either.
Hmm.
Um, so in my teenage years, I knew there was something, but I had believed that he didn't know I was around. Because, like, if he was around, like, why would he let all these things happen? So he must have forgotten that I am there.
It sounds
Um,
like there was a lot of darkness and demonic spirits in and around that situation. But for all you know, as a child and as a teenager, you're like, why isn't
where are
God
you?
here for
Yeah,
me?
yeah.
He was a little bit
Um,
blocked off, I think.
Absolutely. I think, and then there was also the deep belief that I was a mistake. So, when we start believing these things, there is that rift.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was 21, I was in rehab, and it was a Christian facility, and at first I watched the movie about the rapture, which I was like, oh, please, I don't want to be left behind. And I said to myself, well, if God is real, then He will He will let me know somehow, because like here I am in this kind of facility. So and I said quietly in my heart, like, if you are real, could you please let me know if you exist? And it wasn't even a couple of nights later, there was some strange lady that came um, to this house, and we were 15 girls in the house, and she was just coming to paint nails and do things, and I never fitted in with that sort of vibe. I was always uh, on the outskirts, and I was watching all of these girls have fun and talk about things that I didn't have any clue how to join in on. And this woman looked at me and she's like, I have to tell you um, that God wants me to give you a message that seems very obvious to me, but maybe it means something to you because He won't let me not tell you. And she looked at me and she said, he wants you to know that He does not make mistakes. And so immediately I started crying, and she was like, does that mean something to you? And I was like, you have no idea how much that means to me. Um, I had believed that all my life, and I had never told anybody that. So God has to be real, because how how would she have guessed that? How would she have known? And so she continued to tell me. She said, He loves you so much. He sees you and He loves you so much. She said, I'm overwhelmed at the love that He has for you. And uh, I didn't know what to say. I was just a puddle of tears at that point. I was just so grateful to know that He loved me and that He saw me, and that it wasn't true that I was meant to be here, or that He made me. There was a purpose, at least, that all of this was not for nothing. Um, and yeah, that has been my peg in the ground for a lot of years. That was in 2009. I think I got baptized in just sort of the middle of 2014, after my son was born. Um, and then then I started taking things a little bit more seriously and reading more of the Bible. But the last 2, 3 years has actually really been when I've had the most intimate, most beautiful moments with God. And He's given me so many more pegs in my ground. We've just expanded my tent, and it's been wonderful. And I wish I could share this with everybody else. That to it's it's so hard to watch people have a lukewarm, or a like a tepid surface relationship, where like there's a God that you would love to love, like that, and He loves to love you. Don't you just want to get to know Him a little bit, because He can take away all of that hurt and frustration and confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and He really is something special.
That is so beautiful. And I know that everything that you've shared and everything that you've been through, I mean, I can say it's probably tenfold what most people are going through. And yet here you are sharing your story and saying, God is good and God loves you and He loves me and He can heal and He can help us heal from the brokenness that we've experienced. And that's
Yes.
the most beautiful part. And I totally agree with you. I wish that everybody could feel what I feel. And that's why we're talking
Yes.
about this, right?
Yeah.
So I would love if you could, for others who might be struggling, whether it's
Mm.
with trauma or, maybe emotions or just, life in general, what words of encouragement or advice would you share kind of based on what you've been through?
Um, I think um, the biggest thing is, how do I put this in words? Um, there there is light in the darkness. There's an immense amount of light in the darkness, and if you could find it within yourself to ask God honestly, show me where you were. Please explain it to me, or I don't understand, or whatever it is that you're feeling, and I mean, you have nothing to lose other than to try and just break that barrier between that hurt or your stubbornness or that depression or whatever it is that you're feeling, um, and just say, I can't anymore. Can you please take it? Um, there's not been one moment in my life when I've done that God has been like, no, you deal with it yourself. He doesn't do that. Like, he takes that burden, and there's such sweet relief from that. He really does want to be there for you. He's not too busy. He's not uninterested, and he's not pointing fingers either. Um, I'll actually use this. One of the things that I was shown when I was in worship the one day, I had a vision of me carrying a whole bunch of dirty clothes, dirty laundry. And while I was walking along, I bumped into Jesus, and all the dirty clothes fell on the floor, and each item of clothing was a trauma. So those were the traumas that I was carrying around. They were like dirty clothes that I was just lugging around everywhere with me. And Jesus came with his little bucket, and he said, sit here. And he lifted up an item of clothing and he said, tell me about this one. And then he would wash that one while I told him the story of what happened. And before I knew it, we'd gone through all of those clothes, and I told him all of those things. And each and every one of them, those items was folded nicely. And that was his way of showing me that I don't need to clean my mess. I don't, or the mess that I feel I am is not for me to have to scrub clean or hide or run away from. He is happy to just take it and go through it with you. You don't even have to scrub the clothes. He's he sits and does it while you relieve from that burden of having to clean up yourself. Um, is I can't. Yeah, it's no word to describe it really. It's just um, it's a blessing, and it's a miracle really that people that are hurting can go to. He's just amazing in that way.
Yeah,
It's something special. I
that's
would recommend.
beautiful. What a beautiful vision and what a beautiful
I,
just moment to walk through. I am in awe of the healing journey that he has brought you through because so many people in your same shoes might not have, come down this path. So that is definitely, I love your encouragement and your encouraging words to just say, don't give up. There is light
mm,
and cast your worries on him because he cares for
mm,
you and he will take that burden.
yeah.
That's what he tells us in his word. I love that.
Mm.
Was there anything else that you want to share with listeners today?
Um, I think, at at this point in society, in the world, I mean, there's a lot of fear and concern and everything. And for me, I just really hope that if whoever's listening, whoever's struggling with anything, they really just trust in trust God. Um,
Mm.
that's that's what we need to do. Keep keep your faith, keep your hope, keep something, and in the midst of everything that is happening, don't lose heart because um, he keeps us and he will work it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
He works it all out nicely. So I really hope um, that people will just start um, taking those steps closer to him. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And I have to tell you, one of my favorite parts of our conversation today is how we got started and it was pretty, somber sharing this. And as
Yeah.
we've been talking, hearing you laugh, you have the most beautiful laugh. I love it.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thanks.
So, thank you so much, Candice, for sharing this
Thank you.
powerful story today.
Thank you very much for having me. Um, yeah, it's been sure quite cool sharing this. It's been awesome. Thank you.
I hope that it continues to help with the healing process too.
Mm,
And to know that your testimony, others are going to hear this and relate and say, yeah, I'm going through this, and this is now encouraging me to continue going. So
yes.
don't don't ever think for a second that what you share, God is using you right now. And I believe this wholeheartedly. You have changed and shifted my heart during this conversation and encouraged me. So thank you. I'm just so glad that we got to chat tonight.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
All right.
It's been
And
awesome.
thank you to our audience, of course, for tuning
Mm,
in and for being on this journey with us. If you would like to follow along outside the podcast, you can do so on Instagram at The Radiant Mission, Facebook at The Radiant Mission Podcast. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, you can also watch this in video format on YouTube. And today we're going to close with Jeremiah 33. This is a verse that Candice picked that helps her to feel that God is giving her great comfort. And again, Jeremiah 33:3, call to me and I will answer you and tell you and even show you great and mighty things, things which have been confined and hidden, which you do not know and understand and cannot distinguish. We're wishing you a radiant week, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.